The cry in the fog. The wind was cold and sharp that evening. Smoke still rose from the broken walls of Outpost Delta. Sergeant Daniel Cole moved slowly through the rubble, his boots crunching on the blackened ground. Everything was quiet now. Too quiet. The battle had ended 3 days ago. But the silence felt heavier than gunfire. Daniel was here to check for supply source survivors. Though no one expected any, most thought the aliens were gone or dead. But Daniel knew war never ended clean. He stepped over a burned crate, his eyes scanning the ruined buildings. Suddenly, he heard something, a faint sound, almost like a whisper. He paused, listening. It came again, a soft cry, almost too weak to notice. He raised his rifle and followed the sound, careful with every step. The fog was thick, crawling low on the ground like a ghost. Daniel moved through it like a shadow, heart beating fast, behind a fallen beam in the corner of what was once a storage shed. He saw her, a small figure, curled up, shaking, an alien girl. Maybe 10 or 11 years old by human standards. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly in the dark. Her big blue eyes looked at him with fear. She wore torn clothes, her legs scratched and dirty. When she saw the rifle in his hands, she gasped and covered her head. "Please," she said in a soft, broken voice, "please don't hurt me." Daniel didn't move. He had been trained to shoot on sight. Aliens were enemies. That was the rule. But this one looked nothing like a soldier. She looked like a lost child. Scared and alone, Daniel lowered his weapon just a little. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl stared at him, her lips trembling. "Kira," she whispered. "My name is Kira. Are you hurt?" She nodded slowly, then coughed hard, holding her ribs. Daniel took a slow step forward. Kira flinched, her whole body tense. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I just want to help." He knelt down. Putting his rifle on the ground beside him, Kira stared at the weapon, then back at his face. "You're human," she said softly. "Yes, I am," he replied. "Oh, cool. But that doesn't mean I'm your enemy." Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked down. "They took my family," she said. "I ran and hid here." Daniel felt something heavy in his chest. He had seen alien soldiers, yes, but never like this. Never this small, this broken. He took a packet of water from his pack and handed it to her. Kira hesitated, then took it slowly. She drank, her hands shaking. The fog grew thicker, wrapping around them like a blanket. Daniel looked at the sky. Storm clouds were forming again. They didn't have much time. "You can't stay here," he said. "It's not safe." She looked at him with wide eyes. "Where will I go?" "With me," he answered, standing up and offering his hand. Kira stared at his hand, then at his face again. Finally, she reached out and touched him. Her fingers were cold and soft. Daniel gently pulled her to her feet. She stumbled a little, but he caught her. He wrapped her in his jacket and picked up his rifle. Then, without another word, they moved back through the fog together. No one saw them. No one knew. Not yet. Back at the camp, Daniel hid her in the supply tent. He gave her food, wrapped her in blankets. Every time someone passed by, Kira would freeze in fear. Daniel stayed with her as long as he could, whispering calm words. He didn't know what he was doing, only that it felt right. For the first time in years, he wasn't just following orders, he was following his heart. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this choice would change everything. He just didn't know how big the cost would be, but he was ready for it, because the moment he heard that cry in the fog, he stopped being just a soldier and became something more. Daniel Cole had never broken orders in his life. He was a soldier. First, a protector second. But now, he had a small alien girl hiding beneath a worn blanket inside his tent. He stared at the flap of the tent, every sound from outside making his nerves tighten. Outside, soldiers walked past, laughing, talking, unaware of the secret lying just a few feet away. Inside, Kira sat curled up, knees to her chest, eyes wide and silent. She hadn't spoken much since the night Daniel found her, but she followed. His every move like a shadow, every time someone came near. She froze like a hunted animal. Daniel couldn't blame her. She had seen too much, lost too much. And now she trusted a man wearing the uniform of those who had hunted her kind. He brought her food in small amounts, whatever he could hide. Dry protein rations, soft bread. A cup of warm tea he accidentally spilled and had to throw out. Every act of kindness was a risk if anyone found out. He would be arrested, maybe even shot, but Daniel didn't stop, because the moment she had whispered, "Please don't hurt me," something inside him had shifted. "Who did this to you?" he asked one night while wiping her injured arm with a warm cloth. Kira looked away. "People like you," she whispered. Daniel didn't defend himself. He just nodded slowly. "I know," he said, "but not everyone is the same." Kira's expression was empty, like she'd heard that before and had stopped believing it. He wanted to do more, but he was stuck. Even bringing her to the medbay would reveal her. So Daniel stitched her cuts himself with shaking hands and whispered soft words to help her sleep. His tent, once clean and cold, now smelled of tea and dusty old blankets. It became her hiding place, her shelter. But soon the rumors began. Cole's acting weird, one soldier said. Always skipping meals, always in his tent. Maybe he's hiding a bottle. Another laughed. Daniel heard them and stayed quiet. But every day, the danger grew. One evening, a young soldier named Peters knocked and entered without waiting. Daniel jumped to block the way, standing between Peters and the back of the tent. "Whoa, easy, Sergeant," Peters said, raising both hands. "Just wanted to borrow your lighter." Daniel handed it over fast and forced a smile. Peters looked around, then nodded and left as soon as he was gone. Daniel dropped to his knees and lifted the flap of his storage crate. Kira was there, breathing fast, tears in her eyes. "They almost saw me," she whispered. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. I won't let them that night." Kira finally opened up. She sat with her back against the tent wall and whispered her story. "I was born on a transport ship, a worker class," she said. "My parents fixed mining bots. But when the war began, everything changed." Her voice cracked, but she continued. "They took us to a camp. Said we were dangerous. We didn't even fight back." Daniel clenched his fists. She looked at him, her eyes shining in the dim light. "I escaped." "When?" "A bomb hit the camp," she added. "I didn't know where to go, so I ran." Daniel had no words. What could he say to a child who had lost everything to a war she didn't start? He promised himself that she would never go back to that. Not while he was alive, but the camp was tightening security. Commanders had started surprise inspections, and whispers of spies were growing louder. The next morning, Captain Reese visited his sector. She was sharp-eyed, cold, and always 2 steps ahead of everyone. She stopped at Daniel's tent and looked him over. "You look tired, Cole," she said. "Everything okay?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, "just not sleeping well." She stared at him a moment longer, then moved on. As soon as she left, Daniel exhaled slowly. Kira peeked out from behind a trunk, terrified. "We need a plan," he whispered. "They'll find you soon." Kira didn't answer, but her eyes said everything. She didn't want to be alone again. Neither did Daniel. Not anymore, that night. Daniel drew a rough map on the back of an old ration box, a place he knew, a storage cave not far from the base, rarely checked, often forgotten. He could hide her there, maybe sneak supplies in without suspicion, but he also knew once he moved her out of camp, there was no turning back. It would be real betrayal. And yet, as he watched Kira fall asleep on the cot, hugging the old blanket he'd given her, He knew the decision had already been made. He wasn't just hiding her, he was protecting her against the rules, against the orders, against a world that didn't care. The morning sky was gray when the soldiers gathered for inspection. Cold wind moved through the base, making flags and loose tarps flutter. Sergeant Daniel Cole stood at attention, sweat running down his back, even in the cold, inside his tent. Hidden under layers of supply crates, Kira was waiting alone and terrified. He couldn't stop thinking about her small face. Those scared blue eyes, he had hidden her for 12 days now. But time was running out. Captain Reese, the base commander, moved down the line. Inspecting each soldier with sharp eyes, she didn't smile, didn't joke, and didn't miss a single detail. Rumors said she used to be in Black Ops, the kind of officer who never blinked. When she reached Daniel, she paused longer than usual. "Sergeant Cole," she said slowly, "your file says you're a rule follower." Daniel gave a short nod. "Yes, ma'am." "Yet for 2 weeks, you've skipped reports, missed drills, and left your patrol logs half empty." Daniel felt his throat tightened. "I've been unwell, ma'am," he said, still recovering from the last mission. Reese looked into his eyes, cold and sharp like ice. "I see," she said simply, and moved on. But Daniel knew. Deep in his gut, she was suspicious. That night, he returned to his tent early. Kira was sitting quietly, hugging her knees. "I heard voices," she whispered. "I thought they found me." Daniel crouched next to her. "Not yet," he said. "But we have to be more careful." He was about to say more when his communicator beeped. It was a message report to command tent immediately. Priority level red. Daniel's heart dropped. He looked at Kira, then at his rifle, then at the tent flap. "I'll be back soon," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." He left without armor, without weapons, just his shaking hands and a prayer. Inside the command tent, Reese sat alone at the center table. No other officers, no witnesses. Daniel stepped in and saluted. "You called for me, ma'am." Reese didn't respond right away. Instead, she slid a small data pad across the table. Daniel picked it up. His blood turned cold. It was footage from a hidden drone zoomed-in shots of him sneaking into the mess hall, hiding food under his coat. Another clip showed a child's shadow moving behind the crates in his tent. "Explain." "This," Reese said quietly. Daniel closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again. He didn't lie. "She's just a girl," he said. Voice calm but heavy. "A child, alone, injured." Reese stood, slow and measured. "An alien," she corrected him. "And you brought her into a human military base." "Risking every life here, she's not a threat," Daniel replied. "She's terrified, half-starved, and she hasn't hurt anyone." Reese walked around the table, her boots echoing softly on the metal floor. "We have rules, for a reason." She said, "Your job was to report any living enemy child or not." Daniel clenched his fists and watched her get tortured, studied, maybe even killed. He took a breath. "I chose to be human first, soldier second." Reese narrowed her eyes. "You could be court-martialed for this." "I know," he said, "but I'd do it again." There was silence for a long time. Then Reese tapped her communicator. "Bring her in," she said. Daniel's heart dropped. Guards entered the tent moments later, holding Kira in their arms. Her hands tied behind her back, she was crying, cheeks streaked with dust, eyes wide with fear. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I didn't want to hurt anyone." Daniel stepped forward, but a guard blocked his way. "She's not your problem anymore," Reese said coldly. "She is," Daniel replied, louder now. "She's under my protection." Reese didn't answer, just turned and walked out. Daniel stood frozen as the guards dragged Kira away that night. They locked Kira in the interrogation uniton underground metal room with cameras and bright lights. Daniel wasn't allowed to visit her. He paced outside the restricted zone for hours, fists clenched, heart burning. Other soldiers whispered. Some laughed, some shook their heads. But just a few, looked at him with something new in their eyes. Not anger, not fear, but respect. The next morning, an emergency alert echoed through the base. A child had gone missing. One of the civilian workers' sons. Panic spread until footage showed a blast about to hit the boy during a drone attack. A small figure jumped in the way, pushing the child to safety, taking the blast herself. The figure was Kira. She had escaped the cell, not to run but to save someone. When the medics arrived, Kira was unconscious, burned but alive, and the base went silent. Even Reese stared at the footage for minutes, not saying a word. Daniel watched from the side, his hands shaking, and for the first time, nobody dared call her a monster. They called her brave. The medbay was quiet, except for the soft beep of machines. Kira lay still, her small body covered in bandages and glowing patches of medical gel. Daniel sat beside her, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. He hadn't spoken much since the blast. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Kira leaping in front of the explosion, shielding the human child. She shouldn't have been there. She should have been locked up. Afraid, broken, instead, she ran straight into danger. To protect a boy she didn't even know. The doctor stepped in and whispered, "She's stable, but weak." Daniel looked up, his eyes tired. "Will she wake up?" The doctor nodded. "Maybe in a day or two." Then added, "She saved him, you know?" Daniel just nodded. But his heart was heavy. Outside the medbay, things were changing. Soldiers who once mocked Daniel now spoke in quiet voices. "She risked her life," one said. "And she's just a kid," another added. Some were confused, others ashamed. Even Captain Reese didn't speak to Daniel that day. She watched the footage again and again. Kira, running, grabbing the boy and taking the full hit. Not many soldiers would have done that. Fewer would have done it for someone not their own. That evening, Daniel sat by Kira again, holding her hand gently. Her fingers were cold, but she gripped his thumb weakly. "I'm here," he whispered. "You did something amazing." Suddenly, the medbay doors opened, and Reese walked in. No guards, no weapons. Just her boots and a quiet stare. Daniel stood slowly, unsure if he was going to be yelled at or arrested. Reese didn't raise her voice. She simply looked at Kira, then at Daniel. "She's the reason that child is alive," she said softly. "Yes," Daniel replied. "And you?" "We're right," she added after a pause. Daniel blinked in surprise. Reese sighed and stepped closer. "This war has turned us into monsters, but maybe." She reminded us that we still have choices. They stood in silence, both looking down at the small alien girl resting in silence. Then Reese said, "I'll lift the security alert for now." Daniel's eyes widened. "You mean?" "She'll stay here," Reese said, "under watch. But not in a cage." Daniel nodded slowly, relief washing over him. As Reese turned to leave, she added, "Don't waste this chance, Cole. The council won't be so kind." Over the next few days, things changed more. When Kira woke up, she found herself in a real bed, not a cell. Daniel was sleeping beside her chair, chin resting on his chest. She touched his arm gently, and he woke with a smile. "You're okay," he said, trying not to cry. Kira looked around, confused. "Where am I?" "In the medbay," he said. "Safe now." Word of her recovery spread fast. People came to see her. Some brought gifts, some brought food. One soldier gave her a tiny toy drone. Another handed her a flower grown in the greenhouse. Kira didn't understand it at first. Why were they being kind now? Daniel explained it gently. "You showed them something real," he said. "You reminded them what bravery looks like, but I'm not one of you." She whispered. "Doesn't matter," he said. "Courage doesn't care what planet you're from." One evening, The boy she saved, Nico, walked in with his mother. He gave Kira a drawing of the two of them standing under a rainbow. "Thank you for saving me," he said, and hugged her. Kira froze at first, then slowly hugged him back, her eyes filled with tears. But this time, they weren't just from fear. In a short time, the base that once treated her like a threat now watched her with something else. Respect. Some soldiers even asked if she'd teach them her language. Others sat with her during meals, asking simple questions just to hear her laugh. But not everyone was happy. A message came from the higher command, alien found within secure zone, waiting full council decision. Reese called Daniel to her office, her face hard again. "They're coming to take her," she said. Daniel stood still, fists tight at his sides. "We have to stop them," he said. Reese looked at him for a long moment. "I don't know if we can," she replied, "but we might have time to prepare." As Daniel walked out of the office, he knew peace wouldn't last. He had saved Kira once, but now he might have to do it again. Only this time, it would take more than hiding. It would take sacrifice. And deep inside, Daniel knew he was ready for it. Night fell hard on the base. Dark clouds covered the moon, and cold wind hissed through the fences. Inside the medical wing, Kira sat near the window, her small hands pressed to the glass. She looked up at the stars, wondering if anyone from her family was still alive. Daniel walked in with a warm cup of soup and smiled. "You should sleep," he said softly. Kira turned to him, her eyes serious. "I had a bad feeling." Daniel placed the soup down and crouched next to her. "You're safe here," he said. "No one's going to hurt you." But even as he spoke those words, alarms in the distance began to buzz low and steady. He stood up quickly, pressing his communicator. "Status report," he said. A soldier replied, voice shaking. "Unidentified ship just entered orbit. No comms. No ID. Moving fast." Daniel's heart dropped. He looked back at Kira, who had already curled into the corner. Trembling, "I know that ship," she whispered. "They found me." Daniel didn't ask how. He didn't need to. The slavers she had escaped were here. And they weren't going to knock on the door politely. Sirens screamed across the base. Reese stood in the center command tower, staring at the radar. The ship was large, dark, shaped like a claw. "Battle alert, lock down all exits," she ordered. "And get that girl somewhere safe." But it was already too late. A piercing sound shattered the sky, and a drop pod slammed into the western wall of the base. Metal cracked, lights flickered, and black smoke flooded the outer zone. Daniel grabbed Kira's hand. "Come with me," he said. They ran through the corridors. Passing frightened soldiers and blinking red lights, Daniel didn't head for the armory. He headed for the old tunnels beneath the base, used for storage during the early days. Behind them, loud footsteps echoed. The slavers had landed tall, armored, and brutal-looking. They carried shock spears and neck guns, ready to capture, not kill. They didn't care about the base or the humans inside. They came for one thing: Kira. Inside the tunnels, Kira was breathing hard, tears in her eyes. "They'll take me again," she cried. "They always find me." Daniel knelt beside her, grabbing her shoulders. "Not this time," he said. "You're not alone anymore." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the tunnel walls. The slavers were close. Daniel opened a hidden door behind a stack of crates in old smuggler's passage. "Go inside and stay low," he told her. "No matter what happens, don't come out." Kira shook her head. "They'll hurt you." Daniel gave a weak smile. "Let them try." He shut the door behind her and turned to face the hallway. Seconds later, 3 slavers appeared, their weapons glowing. They didn't speak, they just aimed. Daniel ducked behind a pillar, fired 2 shots, then rolled to cover. He was outnumbered, outgunned, but he wasn't backing down. Not while Kira was behind that wall. Up above, Reese deployed reinforcements. She watched. the chaos on the monitors, her expression cold and focused. Why are they risking so much for one girl? Her second-in-command asked. Reese didn't answer right away. Then she said, because she's more than she seems. Down in the tunnels, Daniel was losing strength. He had taken a hit to the shoulder and was bleeding. He leaned against a pipe, his rifle shaking. Suddenly, a hand touched his arm. It was Kira. She had left the hiding spot. I couldn't let them hurt you, she said. Daniel tried to push her back, but she raised her hand. A soft pulse of light glowed from her palm, bright and strange. The slavers paused, confused. Kira stepped forward, her eyes glowing, her voice calm but powerful. I'm not your property, she said. I'm not afraid of you anymore. The slavers took one step forward. Then Kira let the light burst. From her body, a wave of energy that cracked the walls and knocked the attackers off their feet. Daniel stared in shock. What was that? He whispered. Kira turned to him slowly, breathing hard. I don't know, she said. It just came out. Upstairs, the ship in orbit began to retreat. Whatever signal Kira had just released, it was strong enough to shake them. The base's radar cleared, and Reese gave the all-clear order down below. Daniel held Kira in his arms as she trembled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to scare you. You didn't. Daniel replied, you protected us. That night, the base was quiet again, but everything had changed. Kira was no longer just a helpless alien girl. She was something more, something powerful, and now everyone wanted to know who she really was. 3 days passed since the attack. The base was still standing, but not the same walls had been. Reinforced guards were doubled, and eyes now followed Kira wherever she went. Some eyes were curious, others afraid, but none could forget what she had done in the tunnels. That bright pulse of energy, like a storm held in a child's hands. Daniel stayed close to her. He knew the questions were coming, and so were the decisions. Reese had called him twice, asking the same question in different ways. What is she? Daniel gave the same answer both times. She's just a girl. But even he wasn't sure anymore. Kira wasn't just running from slavers. She was something more, something they feared, and something powerful groups might want to control. The message from High Command came on the 4th morning. Transfer the alien girl to Central Station for containment and study. Reese didn't look surprised when she read it. She simply stared out the window and said, they're coming in. 2 days, by ship, and they won't ask for permission. Daniel's jaw tightened. You're going to give her up. Reese turned to him slowly, her voice low. If I don't, they'll send someone who won't bother with kindness. She paused. You've got 48 hours to decide what you're willing to do. Daniel didn't need time. He already knew that night. He visited the old hangar near the edge of the base, the one left unused, half buried in sand and dust. Inside sat an old scout shuttle, small, fast, barely functional, but it could fly, and more importantly, it wasn't on any active registry. He spent all night fixing it, hands dirty, heart racing. Wires were dead, fuel lines cracked, but the engine still hummed when coaxed. He wasn't a pilot, but he knew enough. As he worked, he replayed every moment with Kira in his mind. Her fear, her strength, her smile. He couldn't let them take her. He wouldn't. The next morning, he told Kira everything. She sat on the floor of his tent, arms around her knees. They'll lock you up, Daniel said. Treat you like a thing, not a person. Kira didn't speak at first. Then she looked up. I don't want to run again. Daniel nodded. I know. But this time, he added, you won't be alone. They needed help, someone with clearance. Someone brave, so Daniel found Corporal Maya Lin, the medic who once treated Kira in secret. She didn't hesitate. I'll prep the gate log, she said. They'll think it's a waste run. Then Daniel reached out to Peters, the young soldier who once asked about the lighter. I'm in, Peters said. Just tell me when." Even Reese, silent as a shadow, said nothing when Daniel passed. Her office that day, but she did leave a data pad on his bunk. It held shuttle access codes, flight clearance, and a silent message: "You get one chance the next night." Wind howled through the base as a dust storm approached, perfect cover. Daniel and Kira walked slowly through the side tunnels, Maya leading the way. Kira wore a pilot's coat, a hood pulled low. Guards were busy sealing outer doors as sand pounded the walls. At the hangar door, Peters gave a sharp salute. "All clear," he said, opening the gate. Inside, the old shuttle waited, lights flickering weakly. Daniel helped Kira climb in. Then started the ignition. Engines groaned, but came alive outside. A siren wailed. One of the scanners had picked up unauthorized motion. "They know," Maya shouted. "Go." Now Daniel hit the thrusters and the shuttle lurched upward. Sand burst across the windows as they broke through the roof. Turrets activated, tracking them, but Reese had disabled the firing lock just long enough. The ship flew through the storm like a dart, rattling, shaking, but holding inside. Kira stared at the stars appearing through the clouds. "Where are we going?" she asked. Daniel glanced at the map. "There's a colony on Artemis 4. He said, "Quiet, peaceful, full of people who don't ask questions." Kira leaned against his shoulder. "Will I be safe there?" He placed his hand over hers. "You'll be free," as the base disappeared behind them. The communicator buzzed. Daniel answered, expecting a warning, but it was Reese's voice, low and firm. "Don't contact us again," she said. "Don't. Tell me where you land, but protect her." Daniel smiled. "I will." And then the screen went dark. For the first time in her life, Kira wasn't running. She was flying towards something new. Not a cage, not a prison, but a future. The shuttle cruised silently through the stars. No alarms, no guns, no shadows chasing them. Just open space, stretching wide like a peaceful ocean. Kira sat near the window, staring at the starlight. Her reflection looked back tired, but no longer broken. Daniel watched her from the pilot's seat. She hadn't said much since they left, not out of fear, but something else. She was thinking, breathing, finally free to just exist. They passed through the outer rings of the Artemis system. A small green and blue world came into view. Not a military base, not a city. Just a quiet colony where old farmers, healers, and teachers lived in peace. "No soldiers here," Daniel said. "No scanners, no questions." Kira looked at the planet. Her voice soft. "It's beautiful. It's your new beginning," he replied. They landed near the outer edge of the colony. The port was simple, just a few landing pads and some small buildings made from solar, wood, and stone. A woman in a long brown coat greeted them, her face kind and wrinkled. "You must be Daniel," she said. "Captain Reese told me you'd come." Daniel blinked. "She contacted you." The woman smiled. "Long ago," she said, "if you ever needed shelter for someone innocent, I should listen." Kira stepped forward slowly, her boots crunching on the dusty path. The woman looked down at her and gave a slow nod. "You've been through fire, haven't you, little one?" Kira nodded. "I'm not dangerous," she whispered. The woman touched her shoulder gently. "No child is dangerous, just for surviving." They walked through the colony together. No walls, no fences, just open sky and warm sunlight. People looked up, curious but not afraid. An old man waved. A group of children played near the stream. Kira flinched when one of the boys threw a stone in the water, but Daniel stood beside her. "You're safe now," he said again, and this time she believed him. They were given a small house near the garden fields. It had a single room, 2 beds, a wooden table, and windows that faced the sunrise. Kira touched the soft sheets with wonder. She had never had her own bed before. That night, she slept without fear. Without hiding, Daniel sat by the window, listening to the wind. Weeks passed quietly. Kira began to smile more. She helped the farmers plant seeds, carried water to the healer's tent, and read books under the tall sky trees. The children grew. Two, like her, especially Nara, a little girl with freckles who followed her everywhere. Kira taught them simple phrases in her language. In return, they taught her how to fish, laugh, and dream. Daniel worked as a repairman, fixing broken solar panels and old tools. But every day, he checked the skies, watching, waiting, just in case. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Kira found Daniel sitting on the steps of their cottage. "Do you miss the base?" she asked. He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "I miss the people maybe," he said, "but not the war." Kira sat beside him, her legs swinging over the edge. "I feel different," she said, "like something inside me changed that day." Daniel nodded. "Your power." She nodded. "Yes, but also, I'm not afraid to be seen anymore." Daniel smiled. "That's stronger than any weapon." She looked up at the stars. "Do you think they'll come for me again?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Maybe, but if they do, they'll find you surrounded by people who love you. They'll find a family." Kira reached out and held his hand. "Are you my family now?" Daniel looked at her, eyes warm. "Always." The wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere far away, the galaxy continued to fight. But here, on this quiet planet, peace had a name, and her name was Kira. People would one day tell her story of a small alien girl who pleaded for mercy, and the human who listened, who broke the rules, who gave her shelter, and in doing so, reminded everyone what it means to be human. Because sometimes, the strongest weapon isn't a gun or a ship, it's a hand held out in kindness, and a heart brave enough to answer a cry in the fog.